Hello everyone and welcome to this new lesson. In today's lesson we are going to learn how to respond to good and bad news. But first of all, what makes news news? I asked some journalists about news. What is news? What does it mean? And here's what I got.
So what is news? Well, I think that anything that's interesting is news.
One of my kids, when she was real young, said, "Dad, I like the kind of news that tells you what's happening." And I think in the most basic sense, we're out there on the front lines telling people what's happening.
I think with the advent of the web, what we've seen is a diminishment and emphasis on news as news, and a rearrangement in people's mind about what news is. It's with this kind of equipment, with the web, with everything else, it's now all about me.
I think it's very important to realize that without professionals reporting the news, people who are not advertisers or even community people who might, have a spin or might want to make somebody look good, then the product that you get is no longer news.
I think news is what people want to know and what people need to know. And they don't always appear to be the same thing. And I think that that's when it's our job to make the connection clear.
I think that the news media has a way of actually changing the definition of what news is, because as we report more, we know more about each other and we become more...
As you see, people see news from different points of view. Some people think that news is something interesting and new. Some people say that news is something you don't know and then someone tells you that. And some others say that news must be interesting to you. Some others say that news means to tell people what's happening. And other people say that news must be told only by professionals. In fact, we are not going to go in depth of these things, as we are not concerned a lot about news as a news, whether it's news or not. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to respond to these news. So, when someone tells you something you are interested in, how do you respond? For you, you might not be interested a lot in news. But in your daily life, we get and receive a lot of news from different people. Some news are interesting to us, and some others are not. But it's okay, we have to respond to them in both cases. Whether we like it or not, we have to show an impression. And today we are going to learn different expressions we use to respond to these news. So, first of all, I'm going to present to you some expressions we use to respond to good and bad news, and then let's put them in real situations. Here we go. As you see here we have expressions we use to respond to good news, and here we have expressions we use to respond to bad news. It's very important that you distinguish between these expressions. Unfortunately, people do not respond to the same news in the same way. Some news might be good for you and it might be bad for someone else. This is reality. So, whenever you get a news, it depends on how you see it, whether you felt good about the news or you felt bad, and then you respond accordingly. Let's give an example. If I tell you that school will stop for 1 month, how will you react to that? Oh, if you are that type of good student who care a lot about their education and their future, you will say that, "Oh my goodness, that's too bad." It can be bad news for you, but for another student who doesn't care for his education, will see it as a good news. Wow, that's good news. Let's take another example. Coronavirus has affected more than 800,000 people around the world. Is this good news or bad news? For sure, it's a bad news. How will you respond to that news? Choose only one expression. Oh, that must be awful. Let's give another example. The Moroccan government has controlled the virus. Is it good news or bad news? For sure, that's something good. So, how will you respond to this? Wow, that's great news. Now, I give you another example and you do it first. A lot of people have lost their jobs. What do you think? For sure, it's something which hurts a lot. Can you do it? Okay, that's it. It's bad news. You will respond like this. I'm very sorry to hear such terrible news. Let's give another example. The administration will give precious gifts to students who get first grade. That's very good news. How will you respond to this? Choose one. That's very good news. Super. Or, that's amazing. Let's take another example before we move. China has stopped the virus. Is it good news or bad news? For sure it's good, something very good. How will you respond to this? Oh, I'm glad to hear that. As you see, even your voice shows that you are happy or sad for hearing such news. Now, it's your turn, dear students. I will give you some examples and you have to respond to them, whether they are good news or bad news. Now let's do the exercise together. Our state is making good efforts to stop the virus. Do you feel happy when you hear this news? For sure you will feel happy. So, it's a good news. You can respond as follows. That's wonderful, that's great, that's amazing, and so on. Unfortunately, some people are still going out and don't respect the laws. That's something very bad and this can hurt a lot of people. So, it's bad news. How will we respond to this? Oh, I'm sad to hear this news. That's terrible, that's awful, and so on. Coronavirus has destroyed the economy of a lot of countries. Again, this is another bad news. So, what will you say about this? How will you respond to this news? It must be awful. That's terrible news. That's too bad. Let's take another example. Now, if someone tells you, I want $1 million, will you be happy for him or no? It depends. Let's say that this is a good news. That's great. That's wonderful. That's amazing. I'm happy to hear that. And so on. As you see, it's very easy to respond to good and bad news. Now, let's have a game in the comment section. You are going to comment with something new news, and others are going to respond to you, whether they like your news or not. That's it for today. This is our lesson. It's very short, very simple, and to the point. See you.